Welcome to another episode of The Evaluation Couch, the podcast where we talk about career growth and the field of evaluation. This is your host, Maria Montenegro. At the end of October, I was very lucky to attend Eval24, which is the American Evaluation Association conference, and it took place in Portland, Oregon. It was so much fun, but one of the highlights of the conference was that I actually took the opportunity to record for the Evaluation Couch on site. So I brought in my microphone, and as I was chatting with people and we were talking about my podcast or their careers, I offered them the opportunity to record and answer a few questions to be part of this episode. The people that I interviewed had so much wisdom to share, and I'm so grateful for them, for their time, and for agreeing to do this. I was so amazed by some of the things that they said. And I think it's fair to say from their reactions that they found this engaging and maybe even enlightening.
Oh my gosh.
Oh my goodness.
Ooh. Wow.
Their reactions also made me think that we are not used to reflecting about our career, or even not used to sharing about them. And I think that we should. I think we should normalize having meaningful conversations about our paths, because as you will hear in this episode, sharing can be very powerful. It was also such a great experience experimenting and trying this different way of connecting with people, because I have always recorded remotely with guests. And it was interesting also navigating some of the realities of recording a podcast in person in a public place. But back on track. So in this episode, I will be sharing with you the insights that the people I interviewed had to share with regards to their careers. One thing that I want to point your attention to before I start sharing their answers is that when I was asking them to introduce themselves for this episode, I explicitly asked people to share a description of who they are that did not include position titles or organization names. And I absolutely loved the things that they came up with. I think we oftentimes place so much value on titles, even though titles say very little about our interests, our passions, the value that we add to this world. And titles can also unnecessarily create power dynamics that are not helpful, especially when you're in an event like the AEA conference, where you can instead use that opportunity to create meaningful connections with colleagues. So I'd like to encourage you to listen carefully to how these evaluators describe themselves, and to consider how our conversations with each other would shift and be different if we use these type of introductions more often. We're going to start with a few stories about evaluators that took risks to figure out what they wanted to do in their career.
I'm Carolyn Haythorn. I'm an internal evaluator for a nonprofit focused on education. When I first graduated from college, I thought I wanted to be a translator. So I moved to a different country. I started taking language lessons. About 2 weeks in, I had a huge breakdown, started crying, was like, what am I doing here? The next day I had to just go back to class. But it really taught me, first of all, how to take risks and how to try things. I also learned that wasn't the field I wanted, and that was okay. So I now have a lot of experience. I can speak a whole nother language that I really don't use anymore. And then I pivoted. And I think that's also just valuable too.
Love it.
Hi, my name is Angela, and I'm a Latina evaluator focused on evaluating health programs in Washington, D.C. I think that the riskiest time in my career was when I decided to pivot from being a physician and seeing clients clinically to evaluate interventions designed for community health. It was a risky move because I had pictured a whole life doing what I did in clinical work. And I decided to do evaluation. And within evaluation, I was able to improve the intervention, delivery, and the impact of our care model through different and innovative ways. So I think it was risky at the time, but it paid off because I'm really happy with what I do.
What did you learn from it?
I learned that you need to be flexible. You need to open your eyes, your ears to whatever opportunity there is, because there might be other ways to achieve your goals. And it's always good to keep that in mind.
Hello, I'm Bijan. I'm a PhD student in my last year, and I'm excited about questioning stereotypes and recognizing stereotypes and rethinking them. which we have to do constantly. So one risk that I took was definitely changing careers in order to be with my partner. So I studied abroad in Brazil for a year and fell in love, and then moved to where my partner was, and kind of switched focuses and switched areas and found new interests, which were related to the things I'm interested in, but it was a new focus. And I'm happy I did that, because I think I personally prefer taking risks and seeing what happens than wondering what would have been if I hadn't tried it.
I love Vivian's comment about taking risks instead of wondering what would have been. And these two evaluators also talk about instances where they took risks to ask for opportunities. Hear what happened next.
Hi, I'm Rachael, and I am a evaluator, and I also do research on evaluation. I'm actually very risk averse. And one risk that I did take was that people who were working in another center reviewing a project I was really interested in, and I reached out to see if I could get time to work on it or just to express interest. And I was reaching out to express interest, and then they actually said that they were interested in bringing me on the project. So that was really exciting and paid off. And as women, we don't usually ask for those things.
My name is TK Ford, and I am a peace builder and an evaluator. A time I took a risk. When I was doing my master's degree, I had a professor that was doing peace building work in the South Caucasus and needed an evaluator. And I was still very new to evaluation and still feeling very novice. But I felt like this was an opportunity for me to put myself out there and just ask if, even though I didn't have a ton of experience, I was in the program that he was running, if he would ever consider having me be the evaluator on this project. And I asked, and now I've been doing evaluation with him for the last 2 years almost. I learned, first off, that I'm more capable than I think. I think a lot of people, especially at the beginning of the career, have a lot of imposter syndrome. And I think I definitely still have that to some extent and had that back then. But I think knowing that I don't need to know everything, and I'm never going to know everything, so I can just try to put myself out there, try to be engaged in these things and just see what happens. And if they say no, it's okay. But in this particular situation, they said yes, and I've learned a lot since then.
3 evaluators also shared risks related to taking new positions or new job opportunities.
Hi, I'm Veronica. I'm an evaluator. I'm really focused on global development and really thinking about how the world should move towards a more sustainable path. One career risk I took was when I was deciding what I was going to do after I'd been working at a research institute called the Food Policy Institute. And I got this opportunity to work at a foundation called the Rockefeller Foundation. And I didn't know what a foundation did. I didn't know who the Rockefeller Foundation was. And I was a little bit concerned because I was going to be going in as an associate. At the time, I had already worked myself up to a director, and it felt like I was going to be taking a demotion. At the end of the day, I decided to take it because I was moving from states-based research issues to global-based research issues, and it acted as a big stepping stone that ended up turned out to be a pretty important step in my career trajectory.
Hi, my name is Gabriela Castro. I'm a server of God. If is that the best word, I love to serve people. I was in an organization that I was doing impact, again, like a community server. And then I took the risk to get to another organization, which was not in my language, a language that I haven't been practiced for a while. I feel like that was a big risk and brought me a lot of uncomfortable moments and potentially wanted to quit. But I feel like at the same time, as an immigrant, a person could have taken a lot of risks. So that I feel like that helped me to basically keep up. Sometimes you see yourself like, I'm not going to be accepted, I'm not doing it well, but actually it's the other side that is plenty of more people who is willing to be there for you. And I think that I learned that experience made me transform all the way that I see my life.
I'm Allison Prieur. I'm a learning-focused evaluator. So I was in a job where I wasn't feeling that it was really matching my values. It was a lot of work, overtime, taking a lot out of me. And I knew that if I wanted to move forward, I had to leave that to be able to take the time. So I saved up some money and invested in myself and took the risk to leave that job and then be able to go search for something that really matched. And it was an amazing fit that really changed my career. I learned that you can trust in your experience and your skills and yourself and support yourself and do the things that take care of you.
I like how these stories reveal the complexities and the different types of risks that come with changing a job. Evaluation is a very academic-focused profession, so we also heard several risks related to going back to graduate studies or pursuing a doctoral degree.
Hi, I'm François-Daniel Portelance, and I'm interested in evaluation capacity building and community-engaged evaluation. The biggest risk I've taken in my career is going into graduate studies. I work in education. I really enjoyed teaching and working with students and families and communities, and I wasn't sure if research would actually complement that, but it has in so many ways. And I've been able to share some of my knowledge and expand my understanding of the community in which I work in. It was a big risk. It has paid off, thankfully, but I'd say that's probably the biggest risk so far. I learned that our skill sets can be applied in so many different contexts and that you're not really alone as much as you feel you are. I think the field that I worked in the specialization, our teachers often feel very isolated. So this was a really good way of finding community, even though I wasn't directly connected to their topics. So there's so much diversity that happens with what you know, what you do, and how your skill sets can actually help the world.
I am Teddy Thea Harris. I am a New Yorker, and I am someone who never drinks the Kool-Aid. Wow. Risk that I took, I left my job that I had for over a decade to become an evaluator and go back to grad school. And then have only my wife be the person, as somebody who was an individual who got married late in life, who lived alone, he made money, who had a household, and all of a sudden, here I am, going to grad school again. I learned that everybody can do it. I learned that I was more humble. I learned that I became a better husband because I never had let myself to be vulnerable. I was always doing stuff. Very proud to do stuff. I'm a New Yorker. I'm a Greek American. But it made my relationship better with my wife.
I have a PhD, and I never thought that actually I would be anywhere near graduate education. So when I went into my master's, I went into my PhD, there was kind of this trajectory that I was going on into academia. And then all of a sudden I was like, okay, I love academia. I love research. I love teaching. I love being in community and doing that work. And I got to a point actually when I was coming to the end of my PhD, I was like, whoa, I think actually maybe there isn't a space that I want to take up in the university, but it was really disrupting for me to think about letting go of that piece of my identity that I had really held on to for a long time, thinking I'm going to be Professor Rowe, I'm going to work in an institution, I'm going to make all of these really amazing institutional changes and decolonize the university. But I came to a point of realization that the university doesn't love me back. And what am I doing? Putting all of my energy and my amazing, fun, awesome ideas into this place that doesn't allow me to show up in my working community that's really authentic. And so when I finished my PhD, I didn't apply anywhere. And I had people saying, Gladys, when are you going to apply for these positions? Sending me all these position notices, because it would have been a really easy walk for me right into the space because I had been building up my experience in that area. But I said, I need to do something different. And then I had an invitation to work on a contract as a consultant, and it was only part-time. But I was like, I think I could do this. I think I could try something different and really trust that I need to show up differently in the world in a way that honors my gifts. But going from that guaranteed stepping into an academic position into, okay, I have a half-time contract for 2 years, let's see if this is going to do something, and really making that risky decision. Thankfully, my husband, my partner, he was like, okay, let's do it. I see the burden that this has been on you, and I know that you have big dreams, so let's take this leap. And that was the big risk of it.
And that last one was the best transition into the next theme around career risks, which is consulting and creating your own business. If this is something that you're exploring or starting to do, I hope that these stories are the motivation that you were needing.
Hey, so I'm Audacity Nadler, and I'm an evaluator, and I'm passionate about early childhood and about people being able to live as who they are really authentically in all parts of their lives. I think a risk that I took in my career was starting my own consulting company. And it was really scary to think about what really happened. When I thought about it, the intensity of the imposter syndrome almost kept me from even trying. But then once I started sharing with people that I wanted to do community needs and readiness assessments for individual clients, I realized that I had already made all of the connections that I needed to be successful. And it was really easy to start. And because of those connections that I already had, I think the biggest thing I learned from that experience was just not to tell myself I can't do stuff.
I'm Bijan, and I'm a researcher and human rights advocate. This year, I started my own consulting firm. And all the advice I was reading was about how you slowly build it up from a 9 to 5. And once it takes over a certain amount of time, then you can switch over. I started cold turkey. So I made the leap. And it was a scary time, but it's also a fun time because I had flexibility, opportunity, and I was my own boss. And so I was able to build it for myself.
What did you learn from that experience?
That even if it's scary, it's worth doing.
I'm DiLuzio, and I'm an evaluator. I've been in the community for 10 years now. I just hit my 10-year mark. I think doing my own consulting work was the risky thing. I feel like I'm doing it constantly. It's one thing to have a job and have that security, and it's risky to just put yourself out there and apply to a job, right? And be vulnerable in that way. There's like a whole new level of vulnerability and risk in putting yourself out there as a human being and a professional and hoping that the field will catch you. So a really good example is we're just launching a learning community around quantitative methods for evaluators. And it is terrifying to know I have a good idea. I know that people will receive it, but are people going to receive it? And are they going to like it? Or are they going to judge me? It's just really, it's scary to put yourself out there. So yeah, my learning from it is you got to do it anyway. It doesn't matter how scary it is. You need to jump in and people will support you and you'll be fine. It's not going to kill you.
Hi, I'm Joanna Hillman, and I am a fun teaching enthusiast who loves developing and supporting new evaluators. I left an 8-year successful career as a director of an evaluation center and took a leap of faith to go out on my own. And I said I'd give myself a year, and it only took 6 months, and I made it.
What did you learn?
What I learned is to trust in my network and in myself and my skills in conducting evaluations and business development, and to just go after what I'm most passionate about and stay true to what you're great at, unwaveringly and unapologetically.
And last but certainly not least, I was very grateful that I got to capture my dear friend Zach's reflections on one of the biggest risks that he has taken, which also was my favorite part of Eval 2024.
Hi, I'm Zach Tilton. I am an evaluation student and specialist based out of South Bend, Indiana. I recently was asked to speak on a plenary session about AI and evaluation. And so that happened this week. And I wore a Palestinian scarf, a keffiyeh. And during the course of the conversation, talked about real harms of AI and mentioned the genocide in Gaza and Palestine and how the Lavender Project is algorithmic evaluation process that determines who gets to live and who gets to die. So that was a bit of a risk because I didn't tell anyone. I didn't ask for anyone's permission. And I'm from various affiliations, both in higher education and for practice. I think what I learned from it was that I had a lot of people immediately come up to me to express gratitude and thanks. And one of them was Dr. Hazel Simonet, who came up after me right when I came down off the stage and said, "I need to meet you." Who was this young man? And Dr. Monique Liston said, "I'm going to introduce you to who this is." And I said, listen, we already know each other. I met you last year in Indianapolis when you gave a speech. And in that speech, you said to not ask for permission and to proceed until apprehended. She gave an amazing speech last year. And I even recorded it actually as it was happening. And so that was really meaningful to me to have a parent of the field come up to a youngish mid-career evaluation professional who sticks their neck out there in a small way, in a very insignificant way when you look at what are all the ways that we could show up. Yeah, just that was a really touching moment and something nice and kind that I could say, I already learned it from you. You told me to proceed until being apprehended. And that was directly from that when she gave her speech. So
If you were at the conference and heard this plenary, you might recall how people cheered and applauded during Zach's speech. It's such a powerful reminder that sometimes we have to take risks to stand up for what we believe is right and to stand up for others, even if this can have real negative consequences for our careers. Another question that I asked these amazing evaluators was what their next career goal is and what steps they're taking to achieve them. And one thing that stood out to me when I was asking this is that this was the easiest question for everyone to answer. Even though, as you heard, I interviewed people in various different stages of their careers, they all could quickly describe one goal that they're working towards, which really reminded me of how career development is an ongoing process and it never ends. These evaluators shared a variety of different career goals, from developing specific skills to working towards a specific job, going back to school or finishing their doctorate degree, and even just becoming active members of our evaluation community. Let's hear a few of them.
A career goal I am working towards is wanting to further the use of evaluation where I work. And steps I'm taking towards that is that I'm back in school. I'm also studying implementation science and thinking about how we can use those principles, not only to grow evaluation in my context, but to grow it within other contexts as well.
One of the career goals that I think about an awful lot is related to all of the work that I've done in the past, but really trying to position myself in a place of big influence, not at an organization, but at a global level. And so I've been thinking about wanting to become and move into a role called, let's just call it Chief Sustainability Officer for a Fortune 500 company, reporting directly to the CEO. So some of the steps that I've taken to move in that direction is moving into a corporate philanthropy. Started to learn all about how corporates make choices, sustainability issues, and how a sustainability role would actually look in that role.
I have a lot of career goals, I feel like. I'm really interested in doing my PhD soon. And so I've been looking into various programs. I think another career goal that's maybe like more, I don't know, more direct. I co-wrote a paper like a year ago with you, funnily enough. And that has been my only real academic contribution in the journal. And I've really wanted to get back into that space. I love writing, and I love writing about peace building and evaluation. And so my tangible step right now is just to learn about the journals that exist in the space of both peace building and evaluation, because I know about the American Evaluation Association's journal, but I don't know about any other journals that exist. So figuring out what exists, what they're writing about, and I'm interested in reading what other people have been doing, what's been getting into the journals, and then starting to think about what I can actually contribute to some of those discussions.
My career goal is just to be known as somebody who is good in evaluation, and he connected a lot of dots.
What steps are you taking towards that?
Just going.
Always coming to AA, always going to interesting sessions, processing what I hear, taking it back, being open, and always exploring new things.
One of my career goals at this point has been to just become more actively involved in AEA. I bravely went out for the board a couple of years ago and I didn't make it. So I decided I needed to take a step back. I'm starting with TIG leadership. So this is a career goal. Becoming a TIG chair and program chair is something that I felt was the next incremental step, maybe a long-term goal of being on the board.
Contributing more to the body of knowledge about evaluation is really important to me. And so I'm doing a PhD in that so I can be able to learn those skills, but also then thinking about how practitioners like me can do more of that work outside of academia.
I'm trying to build up my publication list. I want to be joining into academia, going the professor route. So I'm working towards translating some of my understanding and my knowledge into articles that can be beneficial to both the academic community, but also the practice community. So that's what I'm working on now.
One thing I was particularly excited about at this conference was the amount of conversations I heard and had about people wanting to start consulting firms and businesses with a focus of allowing evaluators to show up in the way that they are, to be authentic, and to do meaningful work. And I was very happy that I have two guests who have these type of goals.
I have my own consulting firm, and my next goal is to move into a space where I'm cultivating community in the work that I do formally in my business, inviting people in to dream and imagine what a decolonial, indigenous-centered consulting firm could look like. And so actually, I spent 2 days at the beginning of this conference in a pre-conference workshop with Ubuntu and with Monique Liston and their team.
Amazing.
And I am just like on fire with so many amazing ideas because they are doing it, and there's so much learning that they generously offered in that space. So that's my dream, is to think about what could my company, what could my business, what could this space look like in a different way of showing up. Yeah, cultivating decolonial future.
I would love to eventually have my own consulting company in which I employ other people, because I'm so passionate about being able to implement employment practices that are equitable and that promote equity. And the steps that I'm doing right now are just learning more, just like continuing to build my own client base and figure out what my thing is, so that 5 years from now, I'll be able to launch and include more people.
I mean, who wouldn't want to work in a workplace that operates in the way that they're describing? I absolutely love it. I also had great timing and connected with entrepreneurs like DiLuzio, who is actually in the process of achieving a big career milestone right now.
Career goal I have that I'm working towards. I think this is a big one. My learning community is a big one. So where I would love to see this is a really thriving community with just like a supportive learning environment. I'm acutely aware as a person who teaches both as an adjunct and then I teach workshops that one-off workshops are great, but then when you're done at the end of the day, it's on you to carry forward what you've learned. So to have a vision to do something else is where I want to be able to build something. And then my steps, I mean, I'm launching now. So just talking to people about it and seeing what the reception is. I think another piece that's like the steps that are scary and hard is the investment piece. So recognizing I need to not only invest my time, but money into this. So that's coming up with my goals, working with a marketing person to help me figure out how do I position this nicely.
And I love this goal shared by Bijan about building an intellectual community. I love this concept.
I'm trying to find new intellectual communities to be part of. I feel like having friends who you can talk to about nitty-gritty things about your work is important, but you can't have just one group. You need to have multiple groups. And so I'm here at a conference trying to find other people who could be at new intellectual communities with me. Yeah.
We also had a few that shared their next career goal is finishing their PhD programs and completing their dissertation. We are rooting for you, friends. Know that you're not alone. And now, to wrap up this episode, I wanted to share what the guests had to say in terms of advice they would give to their younger selves. Without prompting them, they collectively provided specific advice on how to embrace planned happenstance in your career journey. The first set of advice is all related to being curious. This is what they had to say.
Hi, this is Prabin from Evaluate I'm one of the young and emerging evaluators, and I also represent as a co-lead of Evaluate Asia and as well as Evaluate Nepal. One advice that I would give to my younger self would be just to be open to opportunities. Don't be afraid to take opportunities. Open to people, open to join networks, and talk to people about your evaluation experiences, what are questions that you have, and what you want to explore.
Hey, I'm Audacity Nadler. I've thought about this a lot, actually. I would go back and tell myself to explore all of the options related to things I already love. In my first life, I was a professional dancer. When I was not able to dance professionally anymore, I went to college and I didn't know there were options like dance therapy, the things that really brought together multiple passions. So, in short, I would just tell myself to ask more questions about potential careers.
I'm Carolyn Haythorn. I would say to try as many things as you can and just relax and do what you like to do, and you'll get to the right place in your life. It just takes time and effort, and that's okay.
I love this advice about being curious, asking questions, and trying different things out. We also had great advice related to being persistent, and especially in the early stages of our careers.
I'm Olivia Melvin. I'm a young and emerging evaluator based in Mississippi. I work in the higher education and learning partnership space, and I've been in evaluation for almost 4 years. If I could go back and give myself career advice, I would tell myself that lived experience is a form of expertise and that my experiences are valuable despite the way that I can justify those with degrees and academic education.
I'm Bijan. Don't shy away from things you don't think are skills. That sometimes the things that are going to get your foot in the door are these things that are just deep down part of you and that people are looking for.
Love it. Can I give you an example?
One of my first breaks was because I could speak Spanish. They needed someone to facilitate a workshop in Spanish. And I didn't trust my abilities, even though it was my first language. But because of that, I was able to get a career in doing work internationally.
Hello, my name is Eddah Kanini from Nairobi, Kenya. I'm a monitoring, evaluation, and gender consultant. I also wear other hats. I'm in a VOPE, that's in my national VOPE in my country, but also regionally in Africa Evaluation Association, and I sit in the board. My career advice would be to be bold and venture into monitoring and evaluation. Being bold means daring to do it, not fearing, not being discouraged, just daring to venture into evaluation. Everybody started somewhere, so feel free to start.
My name is Grace Wanjiru Morego. I'm from Nairobi, Kenya. I am a young and emerging evaluator. I would advise people and my other colleagues to be very courageous. It takes courage to try something new. So this is something that you want to do for yourself, and it's going to be great.
I love these messages about persevering and being courageous. We also received advice related to being flexible throughout your career journey and why this is so important.
My name is Angela. I think that I would give myself the advice of being flexible when it comes to career goals and when it comes to opportunities that present themselves. Because sometimes when you're young, you have this very set mindset of what you want to achieve or what you want to become. And life throws you so many curveballs that sometimes are even prettier and more exciting to go through.
Just chill. Throughout my 20s, I was very ambitious and I had a very specific career in mind, and I was putting all my energy towards that and doing lots of unpaid internships and networking and all of these things. And then life always comes differently than you think, right? And I'm happy that I went with the flow. For example, I fell in love and then I changed my career goals because I moved to a new country. And everything came completely different than I had anticipated, of course. And I think it's good to be okay with that and to know that and to maybe not worry so much and more lean into opportunities as they come up.
Vivian's advice touches also on the importance of keeping an optimistic outlook into our careers, trusting that things will turn out fine. Optimism is another feature of planned happenstance, and a few advice we received was related to this.
I'm DiLuzio. I spent so much time worrying that I was doing it right. And I didn't know at the beginning of my career what I wanted to do and where I wanted to be, and felt like I spent so much time bumping around and just following my whims and really made myself wrong for it. I would tell myself, trust yourself, trust your gut, follow your instincts, do what you love, and it will all come together. And it really did.
Hi, I'm Veronica. If I could give my younger self some advice, I would say stop worrying about feeling like an imposter.
I hope that if you're feeling overwhelmed about your career, hearing some of these perspectives feels like a hug to the heart. What I am taking away is that it's important you trust yourself and that you're optimistic because things will eventually end up falling into place as long as you follow your passions. Moving forward, we had some excellent advice about the importance of the people you surround yourself with.
I'm Joanna Hillman. My career advice to my younger self would be to pick people and managers over projects and location and company first.
My name is TK Ford. My advice would be finding a mentor. I found a really good mentor, and that was what really, I think, helped me become a professional, was finding someone who was going to actually train me in it and give me the professional perspective and show me how the professional field worked, because I just didn't have any of that.
And to wrap it up, these two evaluators shared the importance of taking risks.
I'm François-Daniel Portelance. Don't be afraid to fail. Seriously, I think that was probably the biggest enabler through my career in academia and in evaluation, is being able to take risks and accepting failure as a good teacher.
I'm Rachael. If I could give myself a piece of advice, it would be that I should take more risks and trust the process, because I'm finding at this point things are coming together in ways that I wouldn't expect.
I literally had to ask a few of these evaluators whether they've been listening to my podcast because they're just saying exactly what I'm all about. This episode was so much fun to put together, and I love the connections that I made while recording these on-site at the conference. Thank you so much for listening and to all of my amazing guests. And I hope to connect with more of you in different conferences where we can do this again.